Tracy Momi Reads. I am back today with the first book review of 2023. Yes, and like I mentioned last week, if you saw my video, I'm going to be reviewing Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Black Cake. Okay, so Black Cake, it falls in the Black or African American genre. It's women's fiction and also coming of age. It hits all of those genres and topics, right? And for synopsis, the story is a generational saga that when it opens, it has estranged siblings, Byron and his sister Benny, that they haven't seen each other in years. I want to say 7 or 8 years. And they've come together, unfortunately, to deal with the death of their mother. Their mother has passed away, and they have to, they're forced to sit with her lawyer and listen to a recording that she has left behind because she has some things that, she wants to tell them. Not only like some secrets, but, just some instructions on what to do next. But the recording, like I said, it exposes decades long secrets, and it just makes Benny and Byron wonder, did we ever even know our mother? I mean, because this stuff that she's talking about here, who is this person? It's like they're listening to her tell somebody else's story because they thought they knew her story so well. The title Black Cake, it actually refers to a actual cake. I'd never heard of it. I'm not sure this is like a fruit cake or not, but they say that it has its origin. It was a cake that their mother used to make with her mother, right? And her mother made it with her mother before her. And it has its origins in the Caribbean, where their mother was born. And it's also, as you read through the story, you learn that it's something metaphorical, because just as the black cake recipe and preparation was passed down from generation to generation, it's just like DNA, names, traumas, values, etc. There's just a lot, of things that are passed down from generation to generation. And, that's in life in general, but also in this book, we see that as the story is pieced together, as the reader is taken from the present, where Benny and Byron are listening to the recording, and then in the recording their mother is speaking about the past. So then there's chapters that go into the past, so it goes back and forth from present to past as the pieces are connected, right? Not unlike a recipe when you start putting everything in to make this black cake, so it all ends up making sense in the end. So there was this thing I read in the book, and it was when all the siblings were sitting around, at the table when they finally got to eat the black cake. And it says, they sit silently thinking of small but profound inheritances, of how untold stories shape people's lives, both when they are withheld and when they are revealed. And I thought that that was something that kind of like really summed up the story about how, we take on, things that are passed down from generation to generation, that a lot of us are still doing, not even really knowing why we do it. Like, I'll give you an example. Whenever I cook spaghetti, and I'm sure there are probably some people of Italian descent that will probably clutch their pearls, but I break the noodles in half because that's the way I always saw, like, my aunt, like, when she made spaghetti. But I'm, as I go back on that, I'm thinking there were a lot more mouths to feed. So maybe that stretched it, or maybe because we were smaller, it made the noodles more digestible. I mean, I'm sure there was a reason that she did that, but I grew up just thinking that's how you make spaghetti, And I think that that happens a lot with things that are passed down to us that we kind of continue, whether they're bad or good, That's why I think it's such, it's generational trauma is real, but I also think it's become a buzzword, a cliche, an excuse in a lot of instances, because people are doing things they were taught without really delving into why they were taught that or why the people before them operated that way. And this book really kind of delves into that, and it makes a lot of things make a lot more sense once Benny and Byron hear the entire story. I mean, yeah, there's a big whoa, WTF moment for them, but it's also like even though they're thinking, how well do we know our mom? I think they walk away knowing her a lot more than they could have ever imagined they would. And the characters, like I said, the main two characters is Byron. He's the oldest, and he's a true overachiever, has a PhD, a total, parent pleaser, wanted to make his mom and dad super proud. He's in his 40s, but he's very judgmental as a result. He totally sees the world in black and white. Benny is the baby. She's 36, and because she's just so trusting, it has caused her, to be mistreated and left her questioning, her self-worth in a lot of ways. And then their mother, even though she's deceased, her character is revealed through these flashbacks. And then there's other like minor characters, but Benny and Byron and the mom, they're like the main characters kind of in the book. What I really liked about the story, it's strange, but I like that it started with the fractured relationship of Benny and Byron, because as a reader, you get to go on this journey with them to kind of see how they got there and how they ended up healing. So, spoiler, they do heal and kind of deal with all the things that have separated them and kept them apart the past 7 to 8 years. And because it started that way, it made the ending feel a lot more real and satisfying, as you learn what happened. And I just think that in the end, everything was tied up nicely, and it's one of those things. It's not like a romance story, but I feel like for the type of book that it is, they tied everything up nicely, and it gave us a happily ever after, if you will, with everyone kind of getting closure where they needed to get closure. The thing that I didn't like, I know this is something that happens in real life, and while I do appreciate the realism in the book, I know that there's more than one type of consequence, but there are a couple of people in the book. It's like I wanted consequences for them immediately. I didn't want them to be able to just have like gotten over and gotten on and go on to live their lives out after all the suffering and harm that they caused. But like I said, there are ways that those people suffer, I'm sure, and there's consequences. But damn it, I wanted to read that the person fell off a cliff, So that was the only thing I didn't like. I think that this is the perfect book for people, like if you like, generational sagas that go from past to present, that show you where parents and grandparents, how they started off when they were younger. Because, I think, and again, even in real life, when you kind of put into perspective that your parents, your grandparents, they were the same age as you are maybe now, or they were young once and they had insecurities and they didn't always know what the hell they were doing, and they were making up shit as they went along. But I think the generations that come after always have this high expectation of the ones before them because they're older, but they weren't always older, if that makes sense. So everybody just you learn through age, as you live through shit. That's where the wisdom is gained, and sometimes it's too late, or maybe sometimes it's in the midst of when you already have your own children or your own family. So, we're all humans, we're all infallible. So, but again, if you like generational sagas like that have all the past and present, if you like books, fiction books that have a touch of realism, if you like books that are fiction, but they kind of give you a little history lesson, because there was a lot of stuff in here that I actually looked up, it was actual true stuff, but I didn't know about it. But just things that happened kind of in Caribbean, after the slave trade. There were a lot of Asian people that were on the islands, and I didn't even know that. But if you like that kind of stuff where you get a little history lesson in your fiction, you'll like this. If you like books that have you guessing, you know, identities and scenarios, like there's kind of like a little mystery piece, and then you get this like kind of shocking twist or something that'll like tug at your emotions. This book has all of that. So I think you will definitely find it worth the read. And if I had to rate this book 4 out of 5 stars, I would give it a 4-star. So yeah, Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. And again, we are discussing this, not in real time, but we're discussing this kind of pages and chapters and sections at a time on the Fable app. So we're almost done, but even if you join after that book is over, you can still go back and add your thoughts on different sections and different comments. So if you want to join the FOF POlus Bookclub through the Fable app to give your thoughts on Black Cake, you can do that. And also you can leave comments here on my YouTube channel. And while you're leaving comments, you may as well go ahead and subscribe. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you won't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have an amazing weekend. See you next week. Bye.